Installing a disconnect switch for a wall oven offers several benefits. These include enhanced safety, simplified maintenance, and compliance with insurance regulations. A disconnect switch allows the electrical supply to the oven to be quickly and easily turned off in an emergency situation, such as a fire or electrical fault. This can help prevent further damage or injury. Disconnecting the oven from its electrical source is essential for safe maintenance and repair work. It prevents accidental electrocution and allows technicians to safely access the oven's internal components. Some insurance companies require disconnect switches for all major appliances, including wall ovens. Installing a disconnect can help reduce liability and ensure compliance with insurance policies. There are several types of disconnect switches available for wall ovens. These include circuit breakers, fuses, and remote disconnects. A circuit breaker is a device that automatically interrupts the electrical flow when it detects an overload or short circuit. It can be mounted in the electrical panel or near the oven. A fuse is a disposable device that blows out when the electrical current exceeds its rated capacity. It needs to be replaced after it blows. A remote disconnect is a switch that is installed outside the oven's immediate vicinity, allowing the oven to be turned off from a different location. When considering a disconnect switch, there are several factors to keep in mind. These include location, size and capacity, and cost. The disconnect switch should be easily accessible and clearly labeled. It should not be placed behind the oven or in a location where it could be accidentally bumped or obstructed. The disconnect switch should be sized appropriately to handle the electrical load of the oven. It should be rated for the oven's amperage and voltage requirements. The cost of a disconnect switch and its installation can vary. Factors such as the type of switch, its location, and any additional wiring needed can affect the overall price. Installing a disconnect switch for a wall oven is a recommended safety measure that can provide peace of mind. It allows the oven to be quickly turned off in an emergency, simplifies maintenance and repair tasks, and meets insurance requirements. By choosing a suitable disconnect switch and ensuring its proper installation, homeowners can enhance electrical safety and protect their appliances. When considering the electrical specifications, ensure the disconnect switch is rated for the appropriate voltage, typically 120 volts or 240 volts for most wall ovens in North America. The amperage rating should exceed the maximum current draw of the oven, which can be found on the oven's nameplate. For example, if the oven draws 20 amps, the disconnect should be rated for at least 25 amps to provide a safety margin. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, provides guidelines for the installation of electrical appliances, including wall ovens. NEC Section 422.31 addresses the disconnecting means for appliances. It states that appliances must have a means to disconnect them from all ungrounded conductors. This disconnecting means can be a readily accessible plug and receptacle, a circuit breaker, or a switch. The disconnecting means must be within sight of the appliance or be capable of being locked in the open position. When installing a circuit breaker as the disconnecting means, ensure it is clearly labeled to indicate which oven it controls. The breaker should be readily accessible and not blocked by other objects. If a fuse is used, it should be of the correct type and amperage rating for the oven. Using a fuse with a higher amperage rating than specified can create a fire hazard. A remote disconnect switch should be installed in a convenient location, such as near the kitchen entrance or on a nearby wall. The switch should be clearly labeled and easily accessible in case of an emergency. The installation of a disconnect switch may require the services of a qualified electrician. It is important to hire a licensed electrician to ensure the work is done safely and in compliance with local electrical codes. Before starting any electrical work, always turn off the power to the circuit at the main electrical panel. Use a voltage tester to verify that the circuit is energized before touching any wires. When selecting a disconnect switch, consider the ease of installation and maintenance. Some switches are easier to install than others, and some may require more frequent maintenance. Regularly inspect the disconnect switch to ensure it is in good working condition. Check for any signs of damage or wear, and replace the switch if necessary. Consider the long-term costs of owning a disconnect switch. including the cost of replacement parts and labor. While the initial cost of a disconnect switch may seem high, it can save money in the long run by preventing electrical fires and reducing the risk of injury. In addition to safety and convenience, a disconnect switch can also help to prolong the life of the oven. By disconnecting the oven from its electrical source when it is not in use, you can reduce the risk of electrical surges and other problems that can damage the oven's components. When choosing a location for the disconnect switch, consider the aesthetics of the kitchen. Some switches are more visually appealing than others, and you may want to choose a switch that blends in with the surrounding decor. If you are unsure about which type of disconnect switch to choose, consult with a qualified electrician. An electrician can assess your specific needs and recommend the best switch for your situation. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing and maintaining a disconnect switch. Failure to follow the instructions can result in serious injury or property damage. Be aware of the local electrical codes and regulations in your area. These codes and regulations may specify the type of disconnect switch that is required for wall ovens. Consider the environmental impact of your choice. Some disconnect switches are more energy efficient than others, and you may want to choose a switch that helps to reduce your carbon footprint. When selecting a disconnect switch, consider the warranty offered by the manufacturer. A good warranty can protect you from defects in materials and workmanship. Be sure to keep the receipt for the disconnect switch in a safe place. You may need it to file a warranty claim. Regularly test the disconnect switch to ensure it is working properly. To test the switch, turn it off and then use a voltage tester to verify that the power to the oven is off. If the power is still on, the switch may be defective and should be replaced. Consider the resale value of your home when installing a disconnect switch. A disconnect switch can be a valuable selling point for potential buyers. When choosing a disconnect switch, consider the safety features it offers. Some switches have features such as tamper-resistant screws and lockable handles. Be sure to properly label the disconnect switch to indicate which oven it controls. This will help to prevent confusion in an emergency. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, hire a qualified electrician to install the disconnect switch. Working with electricity can be dangerous, and it is important to take precautions to avoid injury. Always disconnect the power to the circuit before working on the disconnect switch. Use a voltage tester to verify that the circuit is de-energized. Wear safety glasses and gloves when working with electricity. Be careful not to touch any exposed wires. If you are unsure about any aspect of the installation or maintenance of a disconnect switch, consult with a qualified electrician. Consider the accessibility of the disconnect switch for all members of your household, including those with disabilities. The switch should be mounted at a height that is easily reachable by everyone. Be aware of the potential hazards of electrical shock and electrocution. Electricity can be deadly, and it is important to take precautions to avoid injury. If you experience an electrical shock, seek medical attention immediately. Consider the potential for power outages in your area. A disconnect switch can help to protect your oven from damage during a power outage. Be sure to properly dispose of any old disconnect switches or electrical components. Do not throw them in the trash. Instead, take them to a recycling center or hazardous waste disposal facility. When selecting a disconnect switch, consider the reputation of the manufacturer. Choose a manufacturer with a proven track record of producing high-quality, reliable product. Be sure to read the reviews of different disconnect switches before making a purchase. This will help you to get an idea of the quality and reliability of the switches. Consider the size of the disconnect switch. The switch should be large enough to accommodate the wires that will be connected to it, but not so large that it is difficult to install. Be sure to purchase a disconnect switch that is compatible with the type of wiring used in your home. If you are unsure about which type of wiring you have, consult with a qualified electrician. Consider the location of the electrical panel. The disconnect switch should be installed close to the electrical panel for easy access. Be sure to install the disconnect switch in a dry location. Avoid installing it in areas that are prone to moisture or flooding. Consider the appearance of the disconnect switch. The switch should be aesthetically pleasing and blend in with the surrounding decor. Be sure to choose a disconnect switch that is easy to operate. The switch should be easy to turn on and off, even with wet hands. Consider the noise level of the disconnect switch. Some switches are noisier than others, and you may want to choose a switch that is relatively quiet. Be sure to purchase a disconnect switch that is certified by a reputable testing laboratory such as Underwriters Laboratories or Canadian Standards Association. This will ensure that the switch meets certain safety standards. Consider the energy efficiency of the disconnect switch. Some switches are more energy efficient than others, and you may want to choose a switch that helps to save energy. Be sure to properly insulate the wires that are connected to the disconnect switch. This will help to prevent electrical shock and fire. Consider the potential for corrosion. If the disconnect switch is installed in a damp or humid location, be sure to choose a switch that is corrosion resistant. Be sure to properly ground the disconnect switch. This will help to prevent electrical shock. Consider the potential for vandalism. If the disconnect switch is installed in a public place, be sure to choose a switch that is vandal resistant. Be sure to regularly inspect the disconnect switch for signs of damage or wear. If you notice any problems, have the switch repaired or replaced by a qualified electrician. Consider the cost of the disconnect switch. The cost of the switch will vary depending on the type of switch, the features it offers, and the manufacturer. Be sure to shop around and compare prices before making a purchase. Consider the availability of replacement parts. If the disconnect switch needs to be repaired or replaced, be sure that replacement parts are readily available. Be sure to keep the disconnect switch clean and free of debris. This will help to ensure that the switch operates properly. Consider the potential for electrical interference. Some disconnect switches can interfere with other electronic devices. If you are concerned about electrical interference, choose a switch that is designed to minimize interference. Be sure to properly torque the screws that are used to connect the wires to the disconnect switch. This will help to ensure that the connections are secure. Consider the potential for electromagnetic interference or EMI. Some disconnect switches can generate EMI, which can interfere with other electronic devices. If you are concerned about EMI, choose a switch that is designed to minimize EMI. Be sure to properly shield the wires that are connected to the disconnect switch. This will help to prevent electrical shock and fire. Installing a disconnect switch will allow for testing and troubleshooting for voltage drop. A qualified technician will be able to diagnose and correct issues with a multimeter.